Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the very first episode of Wrestling with Life. I'm your host, Patrick Ream, and I'm joined by Adam Chandler and Justin Pusser. Gentlemen, always nice to see you.
Good to see you, I guess, too, Pat.
Yes. Pleasure is all yours.
Most times it actually is, so I'll give you guys the credit for that. I want to start off just by giving everyone a little feel for who you guys are, because I know that there's going to be some people listening that don't have a good base of who you two are.
I'd have been happy if you stopped at there'll be people listening.
Well, you know, I'm sure my mom.
Hi, Justin's mom.
Hi, Justin's mom.
So Adam, just from like a sense of like chronological order, it makes, I think, sense to start with you because you've been in the game the longest. Yeah. I want to be clear, this podcast isn't necessarily about wrestling, but I feel like everyone should get a feel for who we are, and a good aspect of that is kind of getting the game of how we all know each other.
Yeah, so I started training in 2008 at the Monster Factory. At the time, it was in Berlin, New Jersey. So the quick run back, I got into wrestling fairly late. I was kind of into it as a kid, like everyone else was, the Attitude Era and stuff. But I didn't like really get into it till after like high school. I was just watching TV and it was like the draft episode for like WWE, and I was just like, they have a draft? This is cool. So like I still didn't understand all the, like, I knew the whole rumor, like, you know, what everyone said about it being fake, but like I didn't really fully understand any of that. So like I literally just was watching it as like someone who had no clue and was like, oh, this is cool, like there's a draft, like this is kind of real.
Yeah.
So then I just kept watching it after that. Like I got kind of hooked on it and thought it was really cool. So then I was just curious as to like, oh, how does someone become a wrestler? So my first thought was like, well, I gotta join a gym.
No.
So I started hitting the gym. And then I kind of was clueless after that. Like, how does it happen? So I kind of like did some research, which, side note, is really funny because on my social media, I will oftentimes get like DMs from like random people, especially on my Instagram, and they'll ask like, hey, like, how do you get into wrestling? And I always want to reply with like, Google. Like, I don't know why you're asking me, because that's what I did. Like, and this is like, you know, this is still when like, this is before now where like Google's like everything. This is like 10, 11 years ago. And I'm Googling like, you know, wrestling school.
Oh, no, I did the same thing.
Yeah, I think someone mentioned wrestling school on TV one. I think I was watching like a Tommy Dreamer match or something on ECW, like that version of ECW in like 2008, 2007. And someone mentioned like wrestling school, like one of the commentators. And I was like, wrestling school? What's that? So I Googled it. And the one closest to me, I think there was like two choices for me. It was like CZW or Monster Factory. So I wasn't sure what the CZW was. So then I did like research on what CZW was. I was like, man, definitely don't want to do death matches. I was like, I'm kind of a pansy, so I'm definitely not doing that. And so I was like, all right, I'll check out the Monster Factory. So I think at the time, I was still waiting to get a car. I got a car, and after I got a car, I drove down to Monster Factory. And then I met a guy named Ed Atlas, and he was really excited about me starting out. You know, he said I had a good like look for it. I watched them train. They were still do not know the inner workings of it. Like, I'm not one of those guys who like knew how wrestling worked and then joined the school. No, like I still thought like, man, this could be like partly real. Like,
I might get my ass kicked.
Yeah, like I went in full blown like, hey, like this might be real. Like this might hurt, but like this is cool. And I at the time, this is where it really gets weird for me. A lot of people join up with like, this is my dream, I'm gonna do this for a living. I joined up with like, hey, this could be fun. Like, I just want to see where this goes. Like, I had no intention of definitely like getting signed. It was just like, I really like this thing. I want to just do it. I didn't know how real it was. Didn't know how fake it was. Just, I really like this. This captures my imagination. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be an actor. But like my like lifelong hero when I was a kid was like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it was always like, I want to do action movies. And I was like, this is essentially doing an action movie all the time on TV. Like, it's stunt acting is how I saw it, but it's also could be real. So like, who knows?
Right.
So
No, and I love that you chase something that you just enjoyed. You're just like, this is fun. I want to do it.
Yeah,
I don't know if everyone else has that drive.
Yeah. So again, like clueless, and so I was told the pricing, and I was like, all right, well, I don't want to pay the payments because I'll have to pay more money. So like, I'll just try to save up the money, come back. But you know how things go. I get a call 2 weeks later. Hey, you should start up now, pal. We got like 2 people starting. This will be great for you. You should start right now. Like, all right. So I decided to make the payments. I show up. I start with 2 new students. And I think 2 weeks later, I no longer see those 2 students. And this is probably almost everyone's story in wrestling.
Yeah.
So you start with a couple of guys. They can't hash it. I'm an idiot, so I just stick around.
Yep.
I don't know why sometimes. Because I was still very much like a pansy.
Which is weird to think now.
Man, and I'll give all the credit in the world to Ed Atlas. So that's why, because I was just about to actually follow up with, man, Ed Atlas taught me a lot about toughening up and being a man. A lot of that came from him. He was a tough teacher, but even in some of the craziness, like, there was always a reason for it, even if we had no idea what it was. And I think I stuck around because at the time I was like very much in need of like the positive, like, not positive's the wrong word. I was in much need of like the male role model, because growing up, like, my dad and I were never close. Like, he was always around, but we just weren't ever close. So I would attach myself to like mentors. So my day job was at Chick-fil-A. I attached myself to the GM there. His name is Ramon. We're still friends to this day. He was like part of my wedding.
Yeah, Ramon's cool.
Yeah,
I've met Ramon.
Ramon's awesome. And so he taught me a lot about like business and life, and like he really like mentored me, in my professional life.
Not to interject, but I'm pretty sure Ramon's the first person I shotgun a beer with.
Probably.
Like, I'm pretty sure that's the truth about me.
He would. Well, that's the type of guy he is, so he would be. But Ed, I attached myself to, because even through like the tough love, I saw the love in it, I guess. So I started actually wrestling in like 2009, I think. Did a couple like squash matches. Like, started out kind of how everyone at OTW started. Yeah. Back then. More recently, like, a lot of guys were given cool opportunities out the gate. When I started, everyone, you got your ass kicked.
You were bottom rung.
Yeah, you were bottom rung, got your ass kicked, and then, they figure out what to do with you from there. So, like, when I started out, it was like, you're just getting beat, and then they gave me a military gimmick. Because at the time, like, Ed was very much like, hey, like, go to WWE. They're going to, like, tell you to do this thing, and you're just going to have to figure it out. So, like,
I'm giving you this thing. Figure it out. That lasted close to a year. And then he found a lady to make tights. So, like, he just started getting tights made for people. Like, he would just, like, come up to you and be like, hey, I got tights made for you. Give me your measurements. And be like, all right, give me money. But it was cool, though, because, like, now I feel like I missed out.
Oh, yeah, dude. So it was cool because we had professional gear. And it's like, sometimes you didn't really get a reason why. It was just like, this is what's happening. So for mine, he's like, well, what do you have in mind? He says, do you have any ideas? Because I'm going to get you tights made. And I was just like, I'll take lightning bolts. So I had like 2 little lightning bolts sewed in on the back of my first pair of tights. And then he was just like, oh, you like superheroes? You could be like the Flash. And I was like, heavy? So I was Adam Flash Chandler. And going into the next season, my weight got worse because I had like some personal stuff going on, and I was like in a relationship. It like wasn't really beneficial for me. So like I got up to like 270, and he had me grow up my hair because he found out I could grow an afro, and he thought it'd be really cool for wrestling. So it was just like Adam Flash Chandler was just like this heavy 6'2", like heavy kid with an afro.
And a killer pair of sunglasses too.
Killer pair of sunglasses. Back then,
yellow vest.
Yeah, yellow. He got the yellow vest made. That was cool. Back then there was like 2 separate locker rooms, so like everything was done like in the ring. So my moveset was very basic because I didn't really like know how to call anything complicated, and I wasn't all that good because, again, let's go back to the beginning. I went into training not knowing anything about the inner workings of wrestling. so like teaching me like the psychological or like the story of wrestling, like, you know, opening, shine, heat, like that all had to be like explained, and I had to learn from doing, because I didn't understand that stuff even existed. Like,
right, that was a much bigger hurdle for you than maybe some other people.
Yeah, like it was a huge hurdle for me, because I didn't know that this even existed. So that was like my life for a while, up until we moved buildings and no longer were the Monster Factory. Still 2 separate locker rooms, but now we were separated by a little window and makeshift locker rooms, which was a lot smaller than they used to be. And
which like did not even help the perception, because it still looked like one structure from the outside. So it just looked like you were coming out 2 different curtains. You couldn't actually tell there was a wall in the middle unless you were inside the locker room.
Yeah, so it really only hurt us. So that's pretty much building up to where I meet Justin, I think.
Yeah, and so like I could jump in right around here, because as Adam talks about his limited moveset, it reminds me of the first time I met Adam. And the first time I met Adam, I had been wrestling for about a year, and I had to wrestle Adam in that building with the split locker rooms that no one could tell were split except us. And he beat me with a shoulder tackle. I'll never forget it. But before that, I was my training was similar and different in a lot of ways from Adam and the OTW Monster Factory experience, whatever you may call it. I was 18 years old when I started training. I've told this story a handful of times to, you know, I think anyone that knows me has heard it, but I dropped out of high school when I was 17 to take care of my grandmother, who was sick with cancer. I got my GED. And decided I wanted to put my energy into something fun for the rest of my life, and I chose wrestling. That was something I enjoyed as a kid. I'd gotten away from watching it, honestly, probably right around the time Adam started watching it, and then got back into it around 17, 18 years old, which would put me right around 2008, 2009 again, where Adam's at. And I myself Googled wrestling schools local, and I had noticed there was one in Freehold, and I was at the time selling knives for Cutco, which is a pyramid scheme. I don't know if anyone's ever worked for them.
Yeah, no.
Awesome knives. I will never shit on the knives, because the knives are good. Like, the product I sold worked, so I didn't mind.
So let me get this straight. You're still not getting your residual income?
Nah, but I still got the knives that I got to keep. So, like, to me, that was a good trade-off. Like, I didn't know what good cutlery was, so now I'm good. I'm good now. But so I had a demo in Freehold, and so when I left the demo, I was like, well, I'm like 5 minutes from the wrestling school. I might as well pop in. So I popped in, and I asked about it. It was actually a baseball like camp, and I also played baseball my whole childhood. So I kind of went in and was like, hey, what do you guys do about like training like with baseball here first? And I like started tiptoeing around, and then I saw the ring in the back, and I was like, oh, you guys have wrestling here as well. Then I asked about the training, and immediately they lit up. I could tell they like probably didn't have a lot of people inquiring, because the woman who owned the building perked up, and she told me Matt wasn't coming in today, but he would call me. So, all right, cool. So I left my number, and I left that night, and I went out to dinner with my best friend Angelo. We were about to leave to go to Chicago. We were going to Wrigley Field to see a baseball game. We had never been. We were driving out. I was 18. It was a cool thing to get on the road. That was a big part of why I wanted to wrestle, was because as a kid I didn't travel a lot. So like to me, being paid to go to like Boston or Chicago or these cities I never got to see, like hell yeah, I'm in. So I was on my way. I'll never forget. We were eating dinner. We were about to be leaving the next night, and Matt called me, and he was like, "Hey, are you Jim?" I said, yeah. He goes, "Oh, cool. You want to wrestle, huh?" I said, yes, sir." He goes, "How much do you weigh?" Like, I don't know, like 230, 240 at the time. He's like, "Oh, you're a big fucker, huh?" I was like, "Well, I'm like 5'9". Like, I'm not big. I'm kind of chubby, honestly. And he's like, "All right, we'll fix that. Can you come in tomorrow?" I was like, I can't. I'm going to Chicago tomorrow." He's like, "All right, call me on your way back from Chicago. We'll talk." And he hung up. And that was my first encounter with Matt Bourne.
Call me on your way back from Chicago.
Which is what I did. I called him like 2 hours into my 13-hour drive. I was like, "Hey, Matt, I'm on my way back from Chicago." He's like, "All right, can you come in tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Yes."
You could have called him when you got home.
No, which of course I didn't, though. I took it literally. No. So, which is something I tend to do. So I call him on the way back, and yeah, "Can you come in tomorrow?" So I go home. The first thing I do when I go home is go to sleep. I don't talk about the trip at all, because I know I need to be up the next day. I get there at noon. He walks in. He asks me a few questions. He takes me back to the ring. And anyone who met Matt Bourne, his demeanor was very, like, calculated, a little intimidating, methodical. And he kind of burned a hole through me, staring at me. He was like, you can get really hurt doing this. I was like, shit. I know I can, but, like, I didn't need to be reminded. And he was like, all right, can you be here at 5 today? Get a pair of knee pads. I'll see you then. Okay. I went to the front desk. The woman who owned the building was like, it's like a $500 deposit. And it was going to be $3,000 for training. I don't mind talking about the price now. And I was like, shit, that's a lot of money. Like, I grew up with, like, not a lot of money. So I went home, and I asked my mom, I was like, so what am I going to do? Because they told me to come back at 5 with knee pads. I got money for knee pads. But, like, they said it was $500 down. And my mom gave me I'll never forget this. She gave me my grandma's debit card, who had passed away. And we ran that bitch. And that's how I got started. Yeah, I don't know if I ever told anybody that, but that's exactly what we did. And I started that night. There was one other student there. He lasted for about 3 months and got whittled away in a story that I'm sure I'll get into at another time. But it left me and Matt alone for about 6-7 months. It was just me and him. I mean, we would hang out like 6 days a week. Like, he would call me at 10 in the morning. What are you doing? Come pick me up. I'd go to his house. I'd get there by 11. He'd have pancakes made for me. We'd eat. We'd go to the gym. The gym with Matt was impossible for me because I'm not a very strong person. Like, I am, but, like, lifting's not my thing. Like, I'm not a big gym guy. Adam, he's the opposite. But Matt would lift. Like, he would do bench, and then he'd leave the weight on and go, all right, you go. Oh, asshole. Like, I can't lift that. But I would try, because I would never call him yes, sir. And that's what I did. I tried. So the gym wasn't very productive for me, but I went. And we would then leave there. We'd go to the ring. We'd be at the ring from like 2 to 6 p.m. We'd go back to his house, eat dinner, watch tape, talk about life, drink beers, hung out. And I did that every day. I would go home. He'd call me, come get me. And it was that every day. And then he lost the ring in a court settlement with the owner of the building. It got a little messy at the end. Some stuff I was involved with, some stuff I wasn't. But I mean, I remember I was the one that drove Matt to court when we lost the ring. Like, Matt cried in my car and said, I wish I could do more for you. Like, me and Matt were very close. Yeah. And as this kind of was happening, I had met a girl down in South Jersey who's now my wife. And she lives in the town that OTW owned a building. So when I was driving to her parents' house one day, I saw there was a pro wrestling school, and I knew Matt's school was kind of over, and I still wanted to keep wrestling. I had kept wrestling. I was actually driving 8.5 hours to West Virginia for bookings that I got from Steve Off. Steve Off was in the car with me when my mom's car had a tire go through the windshield coming back from West Virginia. So these are the things I encountered in my pursuit of trying to keep my wrestling career alive until I found OTW. And I remember calling OTW, speaking to Ed, and he said, come in at 12 on Saturday.
Real quick, did you ever tell Matt about OTW?
Yeah, Matt actually was alive for about, I want to say,
he was for a little bit.
About a year of me being at OTW. He knew about me. So when I first started wrestling, I was doing a lumberjack gimmick because that's what Matt did in WCW. Yeah. So it's really funny. I was listening to Adam talk about getting tights. When I was having my first match, until 2 days before it, I didn't have gear. Like, I didn't know what I was going to wear. I wore shorts and like a t-shirt to training every day and like Jordans. Like, I didn't know what the hell I was going to wear to wrestle in. Yeah. And so I brought it up one day to Matt. I was like, hey, Matt, like, what do you want me to wrestle in? And he's like, oh, good question. Go get a flannel and like jeans and cut them. And you got work boots? Wear those too. That was all I was told. So I brought them on the day of the show. I was told that on a Thursday. I brought it on a Saturday. I knew I was wrestling the kid I was training with. This was until, before the person left. And Matt walks in. I remember the day of my first show. It was like 12 o'clock. Matt walks in with a pickaxe handle. Like it's Christmas morning lit up. And he's like, hey, I got you this. And he tosses it to me. Tosses me a fucking pickaxe handle. No axe on the end, but like that thing's heavy. It's wood. Yeah. And so I kind of sidestep it in the ring and it lands next to me and I pick it up. And he's like, it'll go great with the clothes. And I'm like, okay. And so I put it all on, and sure as shit, like, it did come together. Like, I got it, but I knew nothing about being a lumberjack. Like, I would just play sports, and like I listen to rap music. Like, this is all right, we're doing this. And Matt said to us before our match, he said, "Do everything I taught you." Well, he taught us a lot of stuff, so we did all of it. And our match was 20 minutes. And I remember coming to the back, and there's people like Danny Doring, Bull James, Danny Inferno. These are all guys who had like been there, done that. Josh Daniels, a lot of people who had kind of been around the scene. Ref Hansen, who's like one of my favorite people. But they all were like, "Hey, what is like WrestleMania out there?" And I had no clue what they were talking about. I was like, "Yeah, I guess so." Like everyone out there was cheering pretty loud. I didn't realize they were mad that I took up all that time. I didn't know, because Matt told me to do that. I had no clue. The second time I wrestled for Matt, he told me to make sure I lay it in, which to Matt was like really laying it in. Yeah. So I did, and then I got punched on top of the head for it, and like had a huge egg on top of my head. Matt laughed about that. And then in my third match there, I was supposed to work Mo Sexton, Mario Bakar. Okay, yeah. And like I was hyped. It's like, he's good. He was really, 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 really good. And it was like a big snowstorm, and I didn't get to wrestle him. And then I wrestled Steve off, and Matt was like, "All right, come up with a finish." And so I came up with a finish. It was just like a swinging neck breaker or something real safe. Like I didn't know what I was doing yet. And Matt's like, "Nah, do the whoopee cushion." And I had tried it maybe 3 times on like a heavy bag at training, because he told me to. Like I could barely stand on the top rope. And I did. And Steve Off wore the most stiff whoopee cushion that exists. Like I did not know that was. But I mean, I got a crash course in a sense, kind of like Adam did, though, where like I was thrown into the fire maybe a little differently, but we both didn't really know what we were getting into. And so then, like, as the time unfolded and I did the West Virginia thing, and I had to learn on my own there, and I went through not getting paid and not having hotels booked for me when I told they were, and all the other things you kind of learn, I learned completely on my own. Like Matt was there to talk to about them, but he wasn't with me. And so, like, OTW, they ran their own shows in their own building every week. So by the time I got there, I was like, oh, shit, like, this is comfortable. Like, this is nice for me. Like, you got training 2 days a week. You got the same people that you're working every week. It's not guys who have been wrestling for 12 years that are, you know, they're going to take advantage of you if they want to. And not that all guys did. Some guys were real cool. Like, for example, you know, James, he goes, you know, I Bull James now, but he was so cool to me when he would come down and train, because he, you know, him and Matt got along, and he would pass that on to me. So it wasn't everyone that was a dick, but some people are dicks, and we all know this. So I mean, getting to OTW was a welcome experience for me, and I met Adam, and like I said, I called Ed. Ed said come at 12. I did. He told Brian I'd be there at 10, so Brian thought I was late. I wasn't. And he had me get in the ring, get in my gear, get in the ring, have a match on the fly. I said, all right, cool, no problem. I wrestled Brian, as anyone did when they got there. Yeah. And I remember we were fine, and then he whipped me to the buckle. And like OTW's ring is a little bit higher. Like the ropes are set a little bit higher than other rings. Yeah. So I took a turnbuckle, and I mean, I'm trying. It's my first time at this place. I'm showing off. I'm trying to like put my all into it. I smoked that turnbuckle with the back of my head. Like I ate it. And I think Brian just called the finish, and we went home, and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I was fine." But like, man, that hurt. And then we kind of laughed about it, and Ed said I could keep training there, and I didn't have anywhere else to train. So I actually paid Ed, not what you guys paid, but I still paid like $50 or $100 a month. I can't remember the exact number at this time. And I did that for like almost a year as well. So like when I hear sometimes that like people are like, "Oh, I started in my backyard because I didn't have money to train." I'm like, fuck you. Yeah. You know, like I paid like a lot of money to do this, and I didn't get
$4,000.
And like, for what it's worth, I don't feel like I got my money taken, because I learned so many things from Matt and from Ed that like I know what I know when I listen to other people talk in comparison. Yeah. I'm not saying I know everything. I love learning from people that know more, but that's not a very high percentage of who exists in independent wrestling, if we're being completely honest.
You paid and earned what you know now.
Right, and I mean, that all comes from experiences as well. I'm not saying there's one way to do it, but I mean, it is something that I know I went through. And so, like I said, I get to OTW, I meet Adam, and I sat under Ed's branch for a little bit. And I think right around, about a year or two afterwards, you come along?
Yeah, that's about it. I had, Adam and I had talked for a while, because he was, speaking of Ramon, worked at a Chick-fil-A across from where I worked. And I would pop in, and him and I would talk about wrestling from time to time, and he would always give me these little flyers for the show, whatever monthly show that was at that time. And after a while, like, kind of digging around, I was like, hey, I want to go to one of these shows because, like, he seems cool and, like, wrestling's cool and I love it.
You show up after I leave Chick-fil-A, don't you?
I didn't actually start showing up to watch shows until afterwards. Yeah. By that point, you had already left.
Because I remember you contacted me on Facebook and you said, hey, I want to go to the show.
He just needed his Adam fix. He didn't see a Chick-fil-A.
Genuinely, like, I really enjoyed, like, you were a cool dude, so I was like, oh, man, it's kind of... And, like, I was, like, really into it. I was like, I want to go see a show. So I started popping up the shows.
Hey, guys, Pat's allergic to strawberries.
That's that.
You look like somebody who would be allergic to strawberries. You look like a strawberry could hurt you.
I think I tried to give him like a free strawberry milkshake once because like someone like forgot it, and then he was just like, I'm allergic to strawberries. So I just remember that.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
He did. But that was cool. Like, that's another cool thing. That's like, it's those small things. Like, it's a chain. He works for a chain. Like, what differentiates?
That's the kind of person he is.
But like, that's what differentiates one location from the next. Why would I keep going that one? Well, because Adam was the guy who was like, hey man, here's this. Like, that helps. Like, that does actually help. Good company, man, without even realizing he was being one. But I started to show up at shows, and I was watching a couple of the night shows, and every so often I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, it had such a cool feel to the place. Because at the time, I didn't know that the locker room was actually split. At the time, I also saw two curtains for the same
as
structure.
did anybody with two eyes.
But
some people with one eye.
But it was so cool, and I was really enjoying it. So after watching the show one time, I was talking to Adam after the show. I was like, man, like, this is so cool. I would, like, really like a way to get into this. And he's like, oh, yeah, just come back. And you just, like, pulled me back, and then Brian and Ed.
Well, I remember I asked you if you were serious.
You did. You did make sure first.
Yeah. I said, are you serious about this? And he said, yeah. And I said, are you sure? Like, do you really, really want to do this? I said, because I'll bring you back there right now, and we'll talk about this, but, like, I don't want to bring you in if you're not serious.
Right. That's important. I mean, I went through a phase especially where, like, if you came into OTW when I was, like, really in my prime of caring, like, you better have wanted to be there or else it was going to be an unfun experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was lucky enough to have you take me seriously and pull me back there and met, and I started talking with them. And I was told to come back, like, a week or two later, dressed, like, you know, somewhat nicely, and you know, get ready to roll. And then I established that I was, like, not cut out for wrestling pretty early on.
Which is okay. I think that's something that, like, a lot of people don't do out of, like, whatever it is, ego, pride, but to not be honest with yourself and, like, yeah, if it's not for you, let's find a different role for you. That's okay. Wrestling is very inclusive. There are a lot of spots for people in the wrestling business. I will always point to, like, how much Perry actually did for OTW. And for those of you that don't know, like, Perry's somebody who he's hard of hearing. He has a little bit of a vision issue. He's a little bit of a slower learner, but he's an incredibly kind-hearted human being, and he just really enjoys wrestling. And he wanted to be around OTW, and he wanted to do something to help. So we let Perry film our matches because he really wanted to get work on his camera. And I appreciated it. Like, every time I had my match recorded,
absolutely,
it's nice to have. And that is a vital part of running an operation that, like, how many places in independent wrestling you do not get to tape your match?
Yeah.
I can think of one. I'll tell you right now. Right Coast Pro does not give you access to your tape if you work there.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Which is a shame.
And I have no issue with JJ. I actually like the people that run Right Coast. However, I don't understand, and I've never gotten an explanation.
With, like, 2 cameras too.
I've never gotten an explanation.
Yeah, and how are you going to be a better performer for that?
And if you're not,
don't get a chance to.
But also, if you're not selling DVDs, like, if you really want to talk about the business aspect, you're not even making money off the footage you're keeping. And so, if I expose it, what am I doing? I'm giving away a ticket to a show that already happened. I mean, my point being, these are the things that you will encounter. So sometimes OTW, I think, all the little things are what made it so special, and that's just an example of one of them.
Yeah, no, it was always wonderful to have. There was tons of people. Your wife put in a goddamn huge
I don't know why
amount of
she
hours.
would do that.
But
she did. She liked everybody, and you know,
it's insane. But after a while of getting slotted into a manager role and training to be like a manager, I was it was on my birthday that year. Weirdly enough, I was told, hey, you're gonna do this in this match. You're gonna do this, blah blah blah. So I invited some people over, and Adam goes, he's like, hey man, are you gonna be on the show tonight? It's like, nah, I just, I wanted to people wanted to see what I was, doing here. So it's like, all right, cool. And then the match comes up, and I do my spot, and I get like ushered into the back, and the first thing Adam turns to me is like, you worked me. I brought you in, and you worked me.
Yeah, which was the first sign that he was a piece of shit, right, Adam?
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, you're a complete asshole.
Well, I was told, like, speak it to no one. And I even asked if it was cool if I told Adam.
Was Ed still there at the time?
No, Ed was not.
Well, yeah, well, then fuck you.
But, like...
If it was Ed...
Why couldn't you keep your mouth shut and told Adam? Like, you didn't trust Adam would keep his mouth shut if you told him?
Well, because I asked if it was cool to tell him, because I wanted to tell him, because I wanted to be like, hey, man, the only reason I'm doing
I understand where you're going. What I'm asking is if you went against those orders and told only Adam, did you feel like that would then get back to that person?
Maybe, honestly.
Because that then means you didn't trust Adam to keep it quiet. Because if you're only telling Adam, the only other person who would go back to him is Adam. So this is kind of the point I'm making. Like, you're trying to talk around it, but really it just boils back to you didn't trust Adam to keep his mouth shut.
I was just...
Come on, man, just say it. I just gave you credit for knowing you couldn't wrestle.
Now, if it was Ed, I would totally understand.
Understood, yeah. Yes. No, yeah.
I was so worried to do, like, anything.
No, that's a good thing. I'm busting balls.
Enjoying everything that was happening there.
I think he came in at a time where like a trash can was thrown because two guys changed the finish. We also had some kid get really
I was one of those people, by the way. I changed the finish. Well, it was blamed on me, but
we had a kid at around that time get really mad after a show and throw a chair against the wall and say, "Damn it, this could have been my time."
Yeah, a person who had nothing to do with the show, like about as much to do with the show as Perry, all things considered.
It was fantastic, and that was like my I'm actually jumping into it at this point kind of thing.
So I understand you not telling me.
Yeah, no, I'm busting your balls. I get it.
Yeah, man. Like I was really enjoying it. I was like, I can't do anything that's like.
No, it's cool though, and I think that's something that like OTW, it to me it was about 4 or 5 year experience, but like. There was a lot of those little moments in my head where like someone got their night, so to speak. Yeah. Like everyone had their, I have people here, something cool's going to happen. And everyone played their role to make sure that happened. Like that's something that also like, it's draining how little it happens on the indies is like people actually putting a card together as an entire, like, I look at it as like lineup in baseball. Yeah. Like everybody has to play their role to make sure this thing ticks. Yeah. So like you can't all be the main event, and I know everyone wants to be, but when you are the main event, show it off. Like that's the time. Like not in the second match. And I sound like everyone who bitches about wrestling. I get it, but it really does matter. And if you've ever been to like an entire OTW show that really came together, I think people have left and like felt that. Where like it felt like it wasn't a long show. It didn't drag. They weren't bored. There wasn't something that made them roll their eyes.
I miss 2-hour shows so much.
Yeah, I mean, it really was like structured properly. And if you were the guy in the first match who lost in 4 minutes, there was a faith in the fact that you weren't going to be that guy in 3 months if you worked hard. Yeah. And that's kind of how it went. And I think that's a system that should be implemented in more places, like a reward system in a sense. No,
it was, and I agree. I think the atmosphere of that place was amazing. It's the fact that it's not a consistent thing anymore is like one of my deepest regrets.
Well, no, that's a whole nother story. Yeah. That's a whole nother story for another day. Maybe if our, multi-faceted listeners that you think we have want to hear it, they can ask for it.
Gotta be hopeful, man.
My mom doesn't count. If she asks, I'll just tell her, like, on my own.
Well, gentlemen, I actually, for knowing you as long as I did, I actually learned some things today, which is awesome.
Good, I'm glad. I think that's what this is for. We want people to know who we are because we're fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Like, I'll be straight up honest, I didn't realize how, like, there was a lot of difference in how you guys, got brought in, but that sort of, like, strong male figure got you along the way for both of you is, like, a nice little parallel.
Like I said, it is very, something between Adam and I that I've always loved, and it's what makes us, I think, great opponents even in the ring, and just our dynamic as friends even, it's very similar but different. Like, we have and I think you fall into the same category, honestly, Pat, and it's one of the reasons I even get along with you, and obviously you and Adam got along prior to wrestling, but we all have similar trials and tribulations that all come completely differently looking. Like they none of them look the same, but they're all similar in comparison. And I think even mine and Adam's wrestling careers look that way, where like, he was one of a person in a class and I was one-on-one, and he was, like he said, like, you know, he didn't know anything, and I did know a little more about what I was getting into, and you know, he was in one building, and I had to travel a little bit, and it was just, they were different, but they really were also similar.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. I'm glad to have got that snapshot of you guys, but next time maybe we'll steer away from this. I have some other aspects. I think you are genuinely like really cool, unique people, and I'd like to dive into some other aspects on the next episode.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Justin's mom, of course,
Yes.
The big shout out, #1 fan already. I appreciate that. We will see you in the next episode.